Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Chip Nellinger and Dan Basse joining us. Chip, seeing our first planting progress report out from USDA this week. We'll talk about the wheat conditions in that later. But 2% planted, on pace with normal. I mean, that's not a big market mover right now, but what is the market focused on?
Yeah, I think weather is something the market's focused on right now. It's a little bit early to be talking about planting delays, but certainly the Dakotas and Minnesota with a big, spring blizzard this week are in the crosshairs. Can they get the crop planted that they intend to up in that area? And in spite of being on track as far as the planting progress goes, the Mid-South Delta area is behind in general. Their window as far as beating the heat is a little bit smaller. So they've got some catching up to do, and some rain on tap. So I think right now the market has digested the stocks and acreage report. They're looking ahead to the weather, and this is typically a time of year where it's a little bit cloudy and murky as far as what the outlook is. So you could see some sloppy, choppy trading here as the market tries to digest this forecast ahead of us.
Yeah, Dan, besides weather, we knew after this acreage report and grain stocks that the trade would kind of focus on weather and shift that focus. What else right now is moving the markets?
Well, international is still moving the market, Ty. And I think, as you look at the Russians, we had multinationals, almost all of them. I don't want to say get kicked out of Russia, but they left Russia unwillingly with some strong elbows to the middle rib. And so, as you think about that, the Russians are taking control of the grain industry, much like they did their petroleum. This is going to diminish transparency in Russian grain trade. I think you're going to see more, let's say, country to country transactions. I think the FOB market becomes a little less, becomes a little more opaque. And then, if I can move your attention away from Russia down to Brazil, you still have the Brazilian farmers who are now about 80% harvested on their soybean crop. But Paraguay has got a $1.80 discount to the U.S. Gulf, and that's giving the market some soybean market some pause as it tries to push its head above $15 for extended periods of time.
Yeah, and you look at some of that lack of transparency. I mean, Chip, does that concern you longer term, similar to what we're seeing, when it comes to China?
Oh, absolutely. I think it seems like Russia has taken a page out of the Chinese playbook as far as the transparency goes. And rightfully so. They've always played it close to the vest. It's hard to get actual numbers out of there. Are they going to export? Are they going to ban exports? Are they going to, create some sort of domestic stockpile? They're playing that game, and we don't know for sure what the end result will be. But to Dan's point earlier, I think the Kansas City market has taken note of the weather in the plains. The Chicago market is where most of the fund and money flow comes in, and they haven't quite cared yet about the Russian situation or this weather in the plains. They've got a big short position on. All you need is to keep this weather on the dry side well into April and the first half of May, and I think that you've got the spark for a nice rally potentially in this wheat market.
Dan, you just had a conversation with some traders over in Europe. What did you learn? What is the long tail that maybe we're not talking about right now that this war in Ukraine could create specifically for the commodity markets?
Well, I met with a lot of Russian, Ukrainian, Baltic traders. We had big meetings, and we all talked about the risks and the opportunities of the markets. The Ukrainians are struggling mightily, as you can imagine. They can't find fertilizers. Seed supplies are several years old. The price of diesel is now up to $34 a gallon. Imagine farming with that. And so, numbers will be coming down. I think actually this year's Ukrainian crop export program will be well below last year. And then if you think about what the Russians just did in taking care of the control of the grain industry, that's fine in terms of buying from the farmer and elevating it on boat. But it's the Russian farmer that will be the big loser. We still believe he'll be able to get some technology from Syngenta and maybe Bayer and some others on the seed side. But longer term, I think there's going to be a drag in production out of the Black Sea in general, including Russia and Ukraine. And that's where I worry about. And so down the road, there seems to be a tailwind, a bullish tailwind, if you will. What we don't know about today, though, is will President Putin actually allow the grain corridor to continue after the middle of May? That he gave us a 60-day extension. The Russian grain traders were more pessimistic on this. We'll see how that all comes forward, but that would be really important as we head into the end of April and middle of May.
All right. Well, when you look at some of the demand and some of the numbers that we got out this week, there were some positive signs out of those demand numbers. We'll talk about that. We need to talk about cattle, hogs. We'll cover it all coming up still on U.S. Farm Report. Please stay with us.